السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. وأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we praise Him, we seek His help, we seek His guidance. Whomsoever we seek refuge in Allah from evil within ourselves and the evil of our misdeeds. Whomsoever Allah guides, none can misguide, and whomsoever Allah misguides, none can guide. I bear witness that there is no one worthy of worship except Allah. He is alone with no partners, and I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his slave and messenger. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. All you who believe, fear Allah as He should be feared, and die not except in a state of Islam. All you who believe, keep your duty to Allah and fear Him, and always speak the truth. He will direct you towards righteous deeds. He will forgive you of your sins. And whosoever obeys Allah and His Messenger has indeed achieved a great achievement. If somebody in today's day and age is very successful, but they're very rich, they can give seminars, they can give talks, they can become even more rich, telling other people how to be rich. If someone's successful, people will pay a lot of money to listen to them on how to be successful. If Michael Phelps wanted to write a book on how to swim faster, people are going to buy that book if they want to swim faster, because he has that credibility as a swimmer. And that's true of anyone who's attained some level of expertise in something. You go to them when you want to learn more, and they will charge a lot of money for you to learn from them. So in our tradition, we are taught to follow the example of the greatest man to ever walk the face of the earth, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we are taught that he is the best in every aspect of being a human being. And so what I want to explain to us today is that we can look at any point in his life and take some benefit, learn something amazing. It doesn't matter what that instance may be, there's something that we can benefit from, because he was the expert that we are going to look to, and it's completely free. Just go look into his life, inshallah. So what I want to do today is stop and think about certain parts of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, and just stop and think about them more critically. When we overlook some of these narrations, we tend to lose out on some of the most amazing, minute details. But when we stop and we ask the right questions, we learn really what amazing a person Rasulullah ﷺ was, and how amazing his life really was. So inshallah, I wanted to look into certain aspects of his life that maybe we have never looked at in those lives before. And so my claim is this, right? That you can take any moment in his life and learn something amazing from. So what I want to start with is the very first moment of Islam. Because if my claim is correct, I have to pick anything. I want to start with the very first moment of Islam. The story we all know, him in the cave. I want to start there, and I want to look at this narration in more depth, and hopefully, inshallah, we can gain that appreciation, that we can learn anything from the life of the Prophet ﷺ if we ask the right questions. So, if we don't know this, we all know the story, but if we don't know how it was set up exactly, I'll explain it. The Prophet ﷺ, before he became a prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put love in his heart for seclusion. That he saw the society that he lived in was not a perfect society. That there was wrong things happening all the time. The way they made Hajj was crazy. The way they treated women and their slaves were crazy. That everything they did, nothing was moral, right? So he recognized that that's not something he wanted to be part of. And for an entire month out of the year, scholars say, he would leave for an entire month out of the year to go be alone with his thoughts in the cave of Hira. An entire month. He would stay there for 30 days. Now you imagine like what it was like to be in a cave out in the middle of the desert, pre-technology for 30 days. What do you have to do? What was he doing there the entire time? He was just like cut off from everything, just clearing his thoughts, right? Being completely with himself, being alone to just contemplate about life and his problems. And he stayed that, like I said, for an entire month, right? So if we put this into context, the Arabian desert, right? How quiet was it? If you imagine at nighttime, how calm it must have been. That you can hear anything, right? You can hear the rocks crumbling down the side of the mountain. You can hear birds. You can, in the daytime, it's going to be very hot, but still it's going to be very, very quiet. You can hear the wind blowing and the tumbleweed spinning. Imagine how much detail in just being with nature like that. So how did he get food for those 30 days? So he would take some with him when he went up there, but many scholars say Khadija, radiallahu anha, his wife, would send someone with food to give to him. And she would entrust him with this food and instruct him, do not talk to him when you're up there. Go there, leave the food at the mouth of the cave, and leave. Don't say a word to him. Why? Because he's there to be in seclusion. If you go there and you start talking to him, you give him the gossip of the town, what's the whole point? So go there, leave the food, and then leave. So how did he know the food arrived? Because it was so quiet, he can hear someone climbing the mountain to get there. It was so calm that he could hear when someone was approaching and leaving him if they never spoke to him. Some scholars say the width of the cave was about 4 feet wide. Right? It's a very small space. Right? I don't know how long exactly, but about 4 feet wide. In that small space, if someone was coming up, of course he was going to hear him. Now, with that context, now imagine, you've been in this cave for 27 days. Scholars say the 27th of Ramadan. But that month you took out might have been the month of Ramadan, right? For 27 days, he's there alone in this cave. And on one of the quietest nights, the 27th night, he hears from the back of this small cave a loud, terrifying voice that says, Iqra, read. Now put yourself in those shoes. What's the first thing you would do? I know what I would do. I would be scared out of my mind. I would freeze. I wouldn't know what to do. I just heard a voice that came out of nowhere. And I've been in this cave for 27 days where it's so quiet I would hear anything. And I just heard a voice come out of nowhere and tell me to read. Some people, maybe they would start running. They might fall down the hill. Some people might grab a rock or something to defend themselves. Like you see it in a time of hardship like that, what a person's true character is, right? What was the Prophet's response? He says, Ma ana biqari. First of all, if someone came and said read, when I was in the cave alone for 27 days, if I put myself in those shoes, I don't care what he's asking me. I'm gonna start asking him questions. How did you get there? You know, how long have you been watching me for in this dark cave? Like, what are you doing here? How did you get here without me hearing you? I would have 1,000 questions. But what does the Prophet do? He responds to him. He says, Ma ana biqari, which can translate to two things. Oftentimes, we only hear, I am not from amongst those who can read or recite. But linguistically, it can also mean, what would you have me recite? And when we think about it, that's the strangest response, isn't it? What would you have me recite? He was just startled, out of his mind. And when he responds is, what would you have me recite? Like, look at the character of the Prophet, that even in that moment, he stops to consider what someone else wants of him. He puts what his own feelings may be, any fear he might have in that situation, to respond to his question, what would you have me read? Or I am not from those who read. And then what does Jibreel alayhi salam do? he squeezes the Prophet. He comes and he squeezes him so hard. The Prophet later says he almost saw death. That's how hard the squeezing was. And then he lets him go, and again he says, Iqra. But what does the Prophet say? He doesn't say, why did you squeeze me for? He doesn't start screaming that hurt. He doesn't say, I already told you I can't read. He just says, what would you have me read? Or I'm not from those who can read. Isn't that such a strange response? And then again, Jibreel squeezes him. And again, he says, Iqra, until finally, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, and is revealed the beginning of Surah. And then Jibreel leaves. And the entire time, we know this narration, the entire time, the Prophet doesn't ask him one question. Where are you from? How did you get here? Why are you leaving? Don't go, I still have so many questions for you. And then Jibreel leaves. And then we see the Prophet and how scared he was. What's the first thing he does? He runs home to his wife. And he says, Zammiluni, Zammiluni. And then what happens? Khadija radiallahu anha, it says in the narration, she then wraps him up, waits for him to recover until he starts to tell the story. And if we don't stop and ask, what's the significance of that? Imagine like your wife, your spouse, or your brother, your sister, someone walks in the front door and they just look terrified out of their minds. I know what I would do. I would start asking them a ton of questions. What happened? What's going on? Why are you crying? And what did Khadija radiallahu anha do? What a smart woman. She just covered him up until he was ready to explain. Like, how beautiful is that? And if we don't stop and ask these questions, we'll never know. She covered him up and waited till he calmed down. And then he explained the situation. And then he said, I think I'm going crazy. I don't know what's wrong with him. Right? And then what does Khadija radiallahu anha say? She says, never, by Allah. Allah will never disgrace you. You keep good relations with your kith and kin, your family. You help the poor and the destitute. You serve your guests generously, and you assist the ones who are in need of you, the people who are afflicted by calamity. What does Khadija radiallahu anha say? She lists characters of qualities of manners and character. She doesn't talk anything about his ibadah. She doesn't talk about you used to abandon all the sins of your people. She doesn't say you never used to do this wrongdoing that everyone in the Quraysh does. She never said you would go to worship Allah an entire month out in the cave, that he wouldn't abandon you. She says Allah will never abandon you. Why? Because you're a person of good manners and character. Isn't that interesting to ask? Why did she specifically say these things? Because a character is what makes a person who they are. Your manners, your dealing is with you every moment. That's who you are. If a person prays Salah all the time, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a good person. But if that person is good in their manners and character at every moment, because your character is not a deed that you just do once. It's a deed that you're constantly doing. And if you're always in good character and good manners, that is always worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is always doing good deeds. So the character is what is important. That's what we learn from this one statement in Khadija radiallahu anha. And then what does she do? She takes him to Warqa ibn Nawfal. She takes him to a scholar. She doesn't know what to do. She has no idea what's going on with Prophet, but she doesn't try to fix it herself. Like, we learn that she's smart. She's going to take him to someone more qualified. She takes him to a scholar. And Warqa ibn Nawfal tells the Prophet, Warqa ibn Nawfal was a Christian. He was before Islam, he was someone who followed the true teaching of the Injil, someone who was believed in the monotheistic Christianity. And Warqa ibn Nawfal tells the Prophet that you were visited by the same angel who came to Musa, and that I wish that I was young, so that when you will be kicked out by your people, I will be there to support you. And the Prophet says, my people are going to kick me out? It's like, what? They're going to throw me out for this? What are you talking about? Prophet had no idea what he was getting into. He had no idea. And Warqa tells him, I wish I was young so I can support you when your people throw you out. And then he says, are they really going to throw me out? Like, you're kidding, right? And he replies, there was not a person that came with this message before you that they were not treated with hostility. So every prophet that came before you was treated this way. Prophet had no idea about any of the other prophets or any of these other stories. He had no idea that they were going to throw him out. And now he's hearing this for the first time. Put yourself in his shoes. I was just startled in a cave by a voice I'd never heard before, telling me to read when I can't read. I was then squeezed. I was physically assaulted by this person 3 times. Then I ran home to my wife. She takes me to a scholar who tells me that there's an angel visiting me, that my people are going to throw me out of my own town. And what does the Prophet do next? For the next 3 to 40 days, qatal wahi, that he didn't receive no wahi from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 3 to 40 days. Absolutely nothing. Nothing happened. For up to 40 days. But what does the Prophet do during that time? He actually goes looking for Jibreel. He goes back to the cave. He goes searching for Jibreel alayhi salam. Why would he do that? The Jibreel just assaulted him. Now he's being told that he's going to be thrown out of his own town if he follows down this path. But what? And I think this point is beautiful. The Prophet is starting to realize that he's given now a duty, that he has a responsibility now. That he looked at the society and he saw everything that was wrong with it. And that's why he left for a month to contemplate. But now he had the ability to change it. And so despite what he felt, what his own fears might have been, any anxieties that he may have had, he put all that behind. He went looking for Jibreel himself. Now I have a responsibility. Now there's something that I can do. There's something that I can change. And the Prophet went looking for the same person that assaulted him. He went back to the cave. And so finally, after those 3 to 40 days, Jibreel appeared to him. And he said, "Indeed, you are the Prophet of Allah." And he actually appeared to the Prophet in his true angelic form. This is where we get the narration where the Prophet looked up and saw Jibreel, and he had 600 wings. And the scholars say, he didn't stop and count all the wings. It was just like he saw an amazing, amazing sight. And the narration says he actually passed out, the Prophet, that it was such a sight to behold that he actually fell unconscious. And when he woke up, he ran home to his wife again. And he said, "Dafi'uni, cover me up." And then was revealed, "Ya ayyuhal mudaththir, qum fa'anzir, rise and warn, wa rabbaka fakabbir, wa thiyabaka fatahhir," and continue. That after that, the Prophet was told by Allah, now you rise and warn. Now you get up and go call people. Now you know what your mission is. And the Prophet never sat down again. That story is one that we've heard before, right? But when we stop and ask questions, there's so much we can learn. What was the character of the Prophet? That at that moment, when you see a person's true character, when they're startled, we saw nothing but the utmost character in that. If we were to look at the life of the Prophet, we should be able to learn from anything, any moment. You open up a book of Sirah, any page, and you're going to learn something amazing from it. From the first narration of Islam, we can see what an amazing character the Prophet was. And if we only knew those few things about him, it's enough to study his life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, talking to the Prophet that you are upon the utmost of character. And if we only knew that he was a person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator, said had the best character, that's enough for us to want to study his life, If we learn that he was actually raised on Isra wal Miraj to a level even Jibreel couldn't get to talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we knew only that, that's enough for us to want to study his life. If we were told that he was, out of all the people that could have been chosen, the last prophet to be ever sent to mankind, that's enough for us to want to study his entire life. If we were told that he was chosen, that on the day of judgment, he is the one person that judgment day won't start until he makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Until he asks of Allah, judgment day won't start. If we only knew that, it's enough for us to want to study his life. That the gates of Jannah won't open in one narration until he sallallahu alaihi wasallam knocks on them and the angel lets him in. If we only knew that, it's enough for us to want to study his entire life. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people who can study and learn the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Before I close, I want to remind us of one last story. It's not directly related to the seerah. It's a story during the Khilafah of Umar bin Khattab. He was sitting with the Sahaba one day. And you can imagine he's sitting in the masjid just like this, a room. And he asked the Sahaba that are with him, let one of you make a wish. Basically said, he's sitting with his Sahaba, right? The Sahaba, his friends. He says, one of you make a wish. And so one person says, I wish that this entire room, you can imagine the masjid, I wish that this entire room was filled with gold so that I can spend that gold on the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And upon that, Umar bin Khattab said, no, that's not good enough. Next, someone else, make a wish. And the next person, he said, I wish that this entire room, instead of being filled with gold, was filled with gems and pearls and things that are more precious than gold. And I would spend them on the cause of Allah and on charity. So he's doing even more than that, right? And upon that, Umar bin Khattab said, no, that's not good enough. And if I was to ask you, what can you fill this room with that would be more precious than its weight in gold or gems? What do you think? And Umar bin Khattab then answered the question. Eventually they said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we have no idea what to wish for, please tell us. And he said, I wish that this room was filled with people, like Abu Ubaidah ibn Abdullah ibn al-Jarrah, that I could use for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He wished that the room was filled with people, like Abu Ubaidah. Do we know who Abu Ubaidah is? He was one of the earliest Sahaba. He took the Shahada at the hands of Abu Bakr on the first few days of Islam. He was someone who made hijrah to Abyssinia and to Medina. He made 2 hijrahs. He was someone, the Prophet ﷺ was known before his Prophet as Sadiq al-Amin, right? The trustworthy. And Al-Amin, Rasulullah ﷺ nicknamed Abu Ubaidah Amin Hadhihi Ummah. He called Abu Ubaidah the trustworthy of our Ummah. He earned that nickname from the Prophet ﷺ, who they called the trustworthy. He was someone who later became the general of the army during the times of Umar bin Khattab. He was a governor for Umar bin Khattab. He was someone who put his entire life ahead of what he wanted in life. He put the deen ahead of everything. He put the deen in front of his own desires. Once there was a story that Umar bin Khattab during his Khilafah, what he liked to do was go to the different cities and basically surprise his governors and see how they were ruling. That's how he kept his people honest. He would go to a certain city and he would just surprise the leader of that city and say, how are things going? To try and see what kind of leader he really was. So he went to go visit Abu Ubaidah. And he met him and he said, okay, let's go to your house for food. And Abu Ubaidah said, yeah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, let's go somewhere else. Don't come to my house. And he said, no, we're going to go to your house to eat. Omar wanted to see his house. Right? And Abu Ubaidah said, you will hurt your eyes if you see my house. And I don't know what you think that means. But Omar said, no, let's go to your house. And he walked inside, and the only thing Omar saw inside of his house was a jug, to hold water or milk, and then a small rug for him to sleep on. It's the only thing inside his house. And upon that, Umar bin Khattab said, Ya Abu Ubaidah, you are an Amir, you're a leader. You don't have to live like this. Where's your furniture? And Umar bin Khattab started to cry. And Abu Ubaidah said, didn't I tell you you would hurt your eyes? He said, this is all that I need. I'm not in need of any more than this. That was Abu Ubaidah. So when Umar bin Khattab said, what do I want this entire room to be filled with? I don't know what you guys thought. But what he said is he needs people. He wanted people like Abu Ubaidah to fill that room. People who put their own desires in the back and put the desires of this deen and put furthering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's cause in front of everything. He was making money as an Amir, right? And if he lived that way, what was he doing with his money if not spending it on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That's what Umar bin Khattab was trying to teach us that day. That tomorrow we have a fundraiser for this masjid, inshallah. And we don't need much money left. And we're going to fundraise, inshallah, all that we need. But the important point that I want to make is that money isn't everything. People are everything. People to fill that musalla on the daily prayers. People to fill that musalla, to come to it for its programs, to be invested in the masjid, to come to participate. If you have a skill, if you're an engineer and you're good at math, come to your children at the masjid. If you're a doctor or a nurse, you can come give flu shots here at the masjid. You can be invested in the community in whatever capacity you own. And anything that you have, you can give. And those are the type of people that are worth more than the entire room filled with gold. And we can be those people. We are what needs to fill the room to make sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His message is being spread the way it's supposed to be, is being conveyed the way it's supposed to be, and that we are really what the Prophet ﷺ wants us to be in Muslims, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us follow the character and the example of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us the caliber of the Sahaba, like Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fix our hearts firm upon this deen, that we fundraise and we get, inshallah, the masjid built within the next few, within the correct time frame, and that this masjid becomes a beacon of light for goodness in this entire area. Ameen. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله. وقيم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله. استقيموا واعتدلوا استووا تراصوا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه أو انقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا إن ناشئة الليل هي أشد وطئا وأقوم قيلا إن لك في النهار سبحا طويلا واذكر اسم ربك وتبتل إليه تبتيلا رب المشرق والمغرب لا إله إلا هو فاتخذه وكيلا واصبر على ما يقولون واهد وهجرهم هجرا جميلا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر وثيابك فطهر والرجز فاهجر ولا تمنن تستكثر ولربك فاصبر فإذا نقر في الناقور فذلك يومئذ يوم عسير على الكافرين غير يسير. ذرني ومن خلقت وحيدا وجعلت له مالا ممدودا وبنين شهودا ومهدت له تمهيدا ثم يطمع أن أزيد كلا إنه كان لآياتنا عنيدا سأرهقه صعودا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks, Rehan, for mashallah excellent khutbah and excellent lesson. A good reminder. Tomorrow, Saturday, November 5th, from 5 to 9 p.m., there will be a fundraising event to support our new building, inshallah, at the grounds of the ICSB. Tickets are $20 per person and $15 for the children under 10. Table outside is available for the tickets to be purchased. World-renowned scholar Dr. Abdul Hakim Jackson, Sherman Jackson, is going to be here. MashaAllah, he's loved all over the world, and he'll give a spiritual talk, inshallah. And also Sheikh Ahmed Bullu will be joining us. Dinner will be served. Parking will be on the streets or in the church. Also, the ex-Albertson on PCH and Oak Street nearby there, which is going to be, inshallah, the new fresh choice. They're building it up, but they have generously given us the parking lot to be used. The address is 2130 PCS Lomita 9071, and there will be shuttles available. So when you come in, park your car there, and there will be shuttle vans going back and forth, inshallah. They'll bring you here. Inform your friends and your family, and mashallah, you have to come together. Almost 80-85% of the building, as you can see, is complete because of all your help. So join the hands like you have done in the past, so we can, inshallah, give a good push. And then ICSB website has all the details also. Bring your checkbooks, don't forget them. All the credit cards, all the cash. Also, a lot of ladies are giving their jewelry as a donation. Close to about 10 families, ladies have donated their jewelry to be auctioned and sold, and the money will go towards the construction, inshallah. Along with that, bring your cameras and your iPhones. We need help. We will have a video movie going on to be taped, but still cameras should be in use. So bring your cameras with you. Buy lunch outside. That helps the masjid also. Donate generously for the general operations of this center, and also for the new building on the left-hand side. There's a big giant black box. You can put your money in there. I'll ask Sheikh to say the dua for the sick and disease. Inshallah, look for seeing you tomorrow.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين وأعلن بفضلك على الحق والدين. اللهم انصر نصر دينك واجعلنا منهم، واغفر من خذل دينك ولا تجعلنا منهم. اللهم اشف مرضانا وارحم موتانا وعافي مبتلانا. اللهم لا تدع لنا في مكاننا هذا العظيم ذنبا إلا غفرته، ولا هما إلا فرجته، ولا دينا إلا قضيته، ولا بعيدا إلا قربته، ولا عسيرا إلا يسرته، ولا كربا إلا نفسته، ولا دينا إلا عنا قضيته. اللهم ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك بها رضا ولنا بها صلاح إلا قضيتها يا رب العالمين. ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا ولمشايخنا ولكل من هو فضل علينا. ربنا عليك توكلنا وإليك أنبنا وإليك المصير. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله خيرا.